state of the economy. First out is our Coast reporter, Kevin Mutai.
Now, the February commodity prices and inflation numbers are out, but they don't look that good, do they, Kevin?
No, Mark and Smriti, that's not the case. They actually don't. According to a report by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, the inflation rate has gone up to about 6.5%. That is considered to be in the last 1 year. And this has also been seen to have led to the increase in commodity and food prices, and in some instances, even tripled. And Kenyans are really feeling the heat. Just take a look at my story.
We meet Saida Sharif in Kisimani, Mombasa County, going about her house chores. Like many Kenyans, she feels the heat of the rising cost of living. The situation is getting worse as compared to several years ago, she says.
Imekuwa na uzito sana. Hatujui tuenda wapi. Pesa hakuna, tunataka kusomesha watoto.
The haves-not are struggling. For instance, every Sunday, hundreds of families walk 4 kilometers in search of free food here in Mombasa. Some cannot afford public transport. The needs of their children, among other basic needs.
Nashukuru sana Mombasa Cement cause amesaidia kuna watu ambao wajiwezi, amesaidia walemavu, anawapa food. Cause kuna watu ambao wanatoka mbali, hawajiwezi, wanategemea hapa.
According to Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, the inflation rate has been growing for the last 1 year to a high of 6.37% in February 2020. Food and non-alcoholic drinks prices covers the largest percentage of more than 10%. Clothing and footwear costs rose by 1.77%. Housing, water, gas and electricity went up by 3.02%. The cost of education rose by 1.80% and health by 0.85%.
Kenya now, we are going to where we'll have the super rich and the super poor. Nobody is taking care of the middle class, and we are losing the middle class by the day because food, percentage of food ikienda up by 50%, and you stay for 5. My daughter works somewhere and she has not had a raise of salary for the last 3 years. While when I look, food has gone up by almost 75 to 100%. So we are likely to have a hardship.
Retail prices of food items have also ridiculously shot up in just a year. The price of a kilogram of tomatoes has gone up by 62%. A kg of maize flour now retails at 42% more than last year. A kilogram of beef has shot up by 3%. A litre of kerosene has gone up by 6% and petrol by more than 12% in the last year alone.
I thought that is what the leaders would have taken up with, but they are only concerned about the top 5 who will lead in 2022. Who is talking about Agenda 4? Everybody now is busy talking about BBI. BBI is not for Mwananchi. Agenda 4 was for the Mwananchi.
Many are now forced to dig deeper and stretch their budgets to make ends meet. The option of digital loans is fast becoming popular among Kenyans as the likes of Tala, Branch, KCB M-Pesa and M-Shwari cash in on the opportunity. But even that leaves many Kenyans exposed to debt distress. Kevin Mutai, NTV, Mombasa.
The frustrations among Kenyans is evident, and more so because maybe millions of them have no employment or have either lost their jobs, and of course that is due to the high cost of living. And my colleague from the capital, Eunice Omolo, has more to do on the tough economic difficulties. Eunice, what do you have to tell us about that?
Yes, Kevin, statistics show that up to 40% of Kenyans are either unemployed or underemployed. Here is my report on how this government promised to create about 1.5 million jobs annually in 2013, but that has not materialized. Instead, there's a high dependency on the informal sector. Here's my report.
Collins Yegon pushes his ice cream trolley in the streets of Kisumu City. A certified public accountant by training, Yegon has never found an opportunity to practice.
We have been looking for an employment only to find themselves in this kind of employment. You understand, this kind of employment. And whereby you employ yourself in the field which doesn't fit your professional qualification.
Miles away in Kakamega County, Chandarana Supermarket advertised for a new opening of over 100 slots in a new outlet they are opening. They had no idea a sea of humanity would show up.
Watu karibu 2,000 ama 3,000. Hatujui hiyo kazi hawa watu wote watapata.
These young people just want an opportunity to make a living in gainful employment, an opportunity that has proven elusive.
Wakati China inapigana na coronavirus, sisi tunapigana na unemployment.
More than 900,000 youths enter the job market annually. That number is higher than overall 840,600 informal sector jobs created in 2019.
Unfortunately, most of the graduates that you get from especially our public universities, they are not ready for the market. The reason being there's a disconnect between what the universities are training these youth in and what the industry expects them to be by the time they come out.
But even those within the job market are not safe, as retrenchments have become the order of the day. Collins Okweri Obura knows too well the pain of losing a job. With his injured leg, a step in life is as painful as the last.
Hata chenye neza kula peke yake ndio shida. Inabidi navumilia kwa nyumba. Maji ndio saa zingine nakunywa. Mguu na ndani inaniuma kupindukia. Hakuna vile nafanya, madawa zilinunuliwa zote ziliisha.
Okwiri now has to rely on an employed relative to meet his needs, painting a picture of the vicious cycle of dependency in the country. For those depended on, it is a double burden. Like Yego, many are now opting for self-employment, however small.
There's also the area of technical training, which the government has been addressing through the TVET colleges. I believe there are many opportunities when it comes to technical jobs that if we were to focus our more resources and more, we get our youth to get more interested in the technical jobs, what you call the blue collar jobs, we would actually be having a better situation than we have currently.
Corruption and unfavorable policy framework have been cited as some of major bottlenecks to growth of businesses and their capacity to create employment.
As a result of the high cases of unemployment and underemployment, many opt for business to earn a living, but that is not safe in this economy, as Alex Mwangi has been finding out. Alex.
Thank you very much, Eunice. Now, the difficult business environment in the country is literally and adversely affecting the nation's future, the youth, who form the bulk of the population. From unpaid bills to high taxes, numerous permits and licenses to the low purchasing power, business in Kenya has become a tall order. Take a look.
25-year-old Lazarus Okinyi dropped out of Kenyatta University because his sponsors, who used to work at Nakumatt, could not afford to pay his fees due to the then giant retailer's financial troubles. Lazarus tried his hand in business with a partner, supplying goods worth 920,000 shillings to the State Department of Irrigation.
So nothing has been paid at all. So we've been waiting for payment since then, 2018.
After supplying the toners to the State Department of Irrigation, what is the message that the officials have been giving you about the delayed payment?
Okay, they keep on saying, we are looking into the issue, we are auditing, come tomorrow, we are almost paying you, just wait for 2 weeks, we are paying. Okay, they keep on shifting goalposts, yeah. So they speak of this today, tomorrow you come, this is another one, but there is no official communication.
Lazarus is just a microcosm of what many budding entrepreneurs face in hopes of making it in business. If it's not the uncooperative clients and low purchasing power, it is the burden of tax.
At the end of the month, we should have to pay county, which is 1,200, which is very expensive to us. Hesabu Jumapili 4 tukitoa tumebakia na 26 na kuna service maintenance ya hiyo tuktuk.
And what with the endless permits and licenses needed to run even the smallest of businesses?
A trader who's moving goods from Nairobi, by the time they get to Kisumu, their profit is wiped out. Because they are paying tariffs in Nairobi, Nakuru, Kericho. By the time you get to Kisumu, you have no profit. Because you have paid fees everywhere.
The approval process for building permits is tedious. There are just about 35 or 39 approvals that one has to get through before you can put shovels on the ground.
As the country builds on manufacturing, regulatory and bureaucratic storms are chasing away potential investors.
Many manufacturers are opting to leave the country for better alternatives in the region. Their biggest pain points being an unpredictable environment and increasingly unplanned taxation.
Kenya touts itself as being a progressive haven for investment. Specifics on the ground, however, are murky.
What challenges did you experience in accessing the funds for the Youth Enterprise Development Fund?
They were asking that we give them a title deed or the logbook. So apparently I don't have any of them.
Lazarus now finds himself in the same circle as millions more, searching for employment. But then again,
I've worked. I've dropped a lot of the CVs, but I've not succeeded in getting one.
a low employment rate and businesses choking from the unfavorable environment can only mean low revenues for the government. Julius Amboko now delves into this headache. Over to you, Julius.
Right, Alex, thank you very much. That was a very insightful report. As you rightly mentioned, it has been a case of runaway expenditure and below revenue targets for the government. And what this has meant is that Kenya has been unable to cut its cloth according to its cloth year on year. And critical in this conversation is the fact that our tax base has been pretty narrow. And what this has meant is that even avenues of revenue seepage have been quite a challenge. I spoke to some analysts about this matter, and here is the report. Kenya continues to grapple with the seeming inability to live within its means, even as the growth of its tax revenue fails to keep pace with the relatively fast growth of the economy. Tax consultants say that this reflects the failure by the Kenya Revenue Authority to effectively widen the tax base.
The number of voters in this country is somewhere around 19 million versus the number of taxpayers, including companies, which stands at about 4 million or thereabouts. So clearly there is a problem in terms of expanding the tax base or the number of people who are paying taxes.
An efficient tax system which gets government the most revenue, given the kind of economy that they have, does two things. It makes the tax very simple and a moderate level. So it's moderate and it's very simple to adhere to.
In the financial year 2018-2019, the country mobilized 1.8 trillion shillings in ordinary revenue, 88% of which was drawn from taxes. The remaining 12% was drawn from non-tax revenue sources such as pension collections, levies, and fees. Analysts argue that the taxman still faces significant hurdles which could lead to a failure in the effort to rope in the informal sector into the tax net.
The reason we can predict that the turnover tax that has been introduced will not work well, if not ultimately fail, and we'll see that in a year, is because it requires so much administrative steps.
But with the country's expenditure fast rising and having crossed the 3 trillion shillings mark in the current financial year, the state is under pressure to engage in austerity measures. As a result, supplementary budgets have become the norm in Kenya's budget cycles.
I think one of the ways we need to be thinking about how we do budgets is to ask, we gave you 10 billion shillings, you're only able to spend 3 billion shillings, how about we give you 4 billion next year instead of 10 billion? And this other excess 6 billion, we allocate it elsewhere.
Then there is the challenge of tax cheats. Billionaire businessmen have been on the receiving end of the nascent bid by Kenya Revenue Authority to close the leakages, but the cases often terminate in court without much of results. The result is an estimated over 200 billion shillings not collected, further deepening the hole that the country is facing. The KRA has committed to tighten the noose on this challenge.
And if there was anyone who acted in the wrong manner, then we will take necessary action.
Now, what this has meant is that Kenya has been on a debt binge, year-on-year borrowing internationally and domestically as well. My colleague Victor Kiprop has been taking a look at this subject, and I hand you over to Kiprop.
Thank you, Julians. By 2016, Kenya had already breached its debt threshold when the country's debt rose over to 50% of the gross domestic product. As of December 2019, the country's total public debt stood at 6.04 trillion shillings, up from 5.2 trillion shillings a year before, shared almost equally between the domestic and external lenders. Well, that figure might keep growing as the country keeps borrowing now that Parliament has approved the raising of Kenya's debt ceiling to an absolute figure of 9 trillion shillings. Given the country's population of about 47.5 million, every Kenyan now owes the country's lenders about 127,000 shillings. In the last financial year, we paid back to China, that's our biggest lender, 11.5 billion shillings. We also paid back another 6.3 billion shillings to Japan and yet another 6.3 billion shillings to France. Well, the debt train and appetite for loans has gathered pace in recent years. In December 2002, when President Daniel Moi left power, the debt stood at about 630 billion shillings. When President Mwai Kibaki left office in 2013, the total public debt stood at 1.88 trillion shillings. And at 6 trillion shillings currently, our debt has grown nearly 4 times under the current regime. Well, Treasury Outlook papers estimate that by the end of 2022, that national debt would have jumped to 7.1 trillion shillings. That will be a 281% growth from when the current regime took over power in April 2013. And money is so tight that the county governments don't seem to be paying their debts in time. My colleague Zacchaeus Masami has been looking at how the issue of pending bills has been affecting businesses. Zacchaeus?
Mzee Fred Mugotiza is a retired civil servant who ventured into the business of supplies. His company has been contracted by the government to supply foodstuff and firewood to Bungoma GK prison. His experience chasing payment has been a torturous one.
Watu wakiumia zaidi, watu wakiteseka zaidi, watu wakihangaika zaidi, watu wakienda mahospitali hata na kufariki, ndio inafanya ubabe wao wa kiserikali uonekane mkubwa. Hiyo ni hali ambapo inatakana watu pia warudi nyuma, warudi chini, tuwe na utu, na tuelewe jinsi mambo inaenda kwa nchi na watu walipwe, kwa sababu hii ni haki yao.
Tulijenga, kazi inafanyika.
Several kilometers in Garissa County, these contractors are suffering a similar fate. Over 50 companies who were awarded various contracts by Garissa County government are yet to be paid.
Kuanzia 2013, ingine 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017. Hatujapata. Hii regime ya mbele hatujapatia sisi hiyo pesa. Ilikuwa mashule na hospitali. Regime ingine amekuja hapa, hatujapatwa.
Many businessmen had hoped that doing business with both the levels of government will help them. Instead, it has killed businesses and ruined livelihoods.
Some of the SMEs here, their properties have been auctioned. There is a lady who is not with us here at the moment, whose house is being auctioned by a certain bank because of lack of money.
Vihiga County kuna ile pesa ilichukuliwa kwa zile departments zenye zilikuwa zimetumia hiyo fedha. 450 million ikakuwa realized. Ikasemekana ilipe pending bills, but up to now hiyo pesa hatujaijua imeenda wapi, because hakuna any contractor hata mmoja ambaye ashalipwa.
A recent audit by the National Treasury shows that county governments owed some 89 billion shillings in pending bills as at June 2018, out of which about 52 billion were deemed payable. As of 10th February 2020, only about 32 billion shillings had been paid by counties, leaving an outstanding balance of about 20 billion shillings. Some 14 counties, including Garissa, Vihiga, Siaya, Nairobi and Mandera, were sent back to the drawing board to re-evaluate their bills. The audit further showed that the national government owed contractors and suppliers some 58.2 billion shillings, out of which 43.2 billion are contested and being audited. Of the verified 15 billion shillings, the National Treasury says the government has paid 12.5 billion shillings and has committed to pay the deficit of 2.5 billion shillings by March. For these dejected businessmen, that directive remains just an empty rhetoric if it's not followed through.